Yeah, this is the Adyar Punga case. Basically, it's a plan to develop an eco park in between the city of Chennai. So the part where you can see the Adyar Creek, that will be the phase 1 of the project, and Adyar Estuary will be the phase 2 of the project. And uh, these areas were initially very clean, and the river which flowed was of drinking potential, but due to dumping and encroachment and other illegal activities, it degraded and became just like a sewer drain. So in 1985, the World Wildlife Fund asked the Adyar Creek to be developed as a bird sanctuary. Then later on, in 1992, government of Tamil Nadu came up with a proposal to construct a memorial of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, but the NGOs over there assumed that this was an activity to develop other buildings, and which will in fact degrade the Adyar Creek even more. So these NGOs filed a lawsuit, and the case went on for many years. But in 2005, High Court ordered Tamil Nadu TNC ZMA and government of Tamil Nadu to immediately restore areas affected by sand extraction and ensure enforcement of coastal region regulations which prevented any construction activity. So during this time, NGOs said that you cannot develop this because of some rules, and then government said that these rules are not valid because of some other reason. So there was a lot of fighting in the court, but eventually government of Tamil Nadu handed the 58 acres of Adyar Creek to Corporation of Chennai for developing this project. The PFC consultants were selected to go ahead with it. This eco park was also to be the center for generating awareness of the ecology and protecting the nature. So in December 2004, Chennai was hit by tsunami, and all the progress was stopped, and eventually it got delayed. But during that time, PFC consultants did some other survey about what exactly the situation in Adyar was. So they found out that the debris and illegal dumping which used to happen, and how to deal with it, they came up with a plan. So after this, a special purpose vehicle was set up between ACRT and Tamil Nadu Road Development Company for specially developing this Adyar Eco Park. This was in 2004, end of 2004. In 2006, because of the elections, the government changed, and they were not particularly supportive of this project. But due to pressures from civil society and insistence of PFC and other administrative officials, they decided to took up this project. So then 100 crores was also set aside for developing this. It entrusted the responsibilities to Tamil Nadu Urban Infrastructure Finance Service Limited. So they also created this new Adyar Punga Trust. It comprised of all the relevant government agencies and departments like Corporation of Chennai, Chennai Metro Development Authority, and Chennai Water Supply. So because of having all of these relevant government bodies on its board, they were able to manage other issues like dumping of sewage into that creek very effectively in later stage. So still there were a lot of concerns like the local people which were around that area, they needed to be resettled, but then they protested that we don't want to go away from here, but they didn't actually achieve any political support, and finally they had to move. NGOs also so now in earlier in the High Court rule, they were so there was some rule that whenever in future, if this will be developed, their creek part will be developed, then all the stakeholders need to be told about it well in future. But NGOs were not told this time, and so they approached government. Then so basically their argument was that park did not represent the restoration, but it was actually corrupt practice by government to develop other constructions. They also argued that only developing 58 acres of the creek would not suffice, and the whole 300 acres need to be developed, which they had actually planned in phase 2. So sensing discontent among various stakeholders, group by the name of Friends of Adyar Punga was formed, and they did a very good work in marketing this project so that they got the public support. So basically they asked the school students to visit over there. There were field trips, around 50 schools visited. They also set up some competitions which was heavily publicized, so people got to know about it. Around 50,000 people attended the same this eco park, and they were quite happy with it. So finally the verdict was High Court allowed Adyar Punga Trust to go ahead with the project and gave their approval to the revised master plan, and this which you see is the revised master plan. So it has a lot of flora, fauna, unique migratory birds travel over here. Yeah, so basically the High Court also ordered the setting up of citizen monitoring committee for this project, and all the relevant stakeholders like CAG, which was the NGO, Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, Exnora, another again NGO. So all of these stakeholders were included in that committee. So now finally during the implementation, PFC was again appointed as the official body for implementing this. 150,000 tons of debris was removed, 100,000 samplings, 36,000. These are just the numbers, but they did a very good work. So the project also involved intense coordination with the various government departments to arrest the inflow of sewage, manage solid waste, and select the location of dump site for debris removal from the park. So this coordination was facilitated because of support of various stakeholders. So they felt like they were actually included in the decision making part and not just for the sake of inclusion. That's why all the approvals, getting approvals were quite easy, and it was I think completed within 2.5 years. So finally it was opened in 2011 with restricted access to public because they feared that public would again deteriorate it, but within 3 years it was opened fully to the public. So the next part, phase 2, shall be continued, but there are various other problems with it, like the rehabilitation of the people over there is not as easy as it was in the previous case, because they are already rehabilitated from the southern part of Chennai, and now again they were also affected by tsunami the most, so everyone has empathy with them. So let's see how it happens.
So a few things I want to sort of highlight. Hopefully everyone has a sense of the number of stakeholders, right, that had a stake in this project, right? Stakeholder, somebody has a stake in it, and the number of organizations that are listed are large. How many of you know where the Adyar Punga is? How many of you know where Adyar Punga is? It's actually pretty close to IIT. If you actually go from here to Marina Beach, you will pass it, right? But now I think it is open for visitors only maybe before 6 o'clock or something like that. I think, I'm not sure if that still holds in the morning, so you have to go there very early, or I think you can requisition and there can be some guided, or at least used to be the case that, you know, school could take a bunch of students. I'm not sure if that's the case now. Okay, so what I want to do is, yeah, I mean, I don't have time to play the video because we don't have enough time and it's about 15 minutes, but maybe I'll play the first few minutes and just see what it looks like, and then go on to a little bit of analysis. And it's on YouTube, so you can go ahead and take a look.
Man is a fundamental part of nature, interconnected and interdependent with all that we see as life on Earth. But unplanned urban development has, in its course, created an artificial world which has global consciousness is now emerging for environmentally sustainable cities. This consciousness is being reflected in a plan to restore the biodiversity of the Adyar River estuary and creek regions. In a unique government-led initiative, several agencies have come together and partnered with ecologists to create a sustainable design for the Adyar Punga Ecological Restoration Project. The vision of the project is to recreate with as much fidelity as possible the estuarine ecosystem of the Adyar River and creek area in a way where people can experience and understand the dynamics of rejuvenating the environment and thereby develop a healthy respect for it. The Adyar Punga Trust has been formed to execute the Adyar Punga Eco Restoration Project in 2 stages. First, to restore the creek area of 58 acres with public participation, and second, to secure, heal and protect the entire estuarine system of 358 acres. A draft master plan has been prepared for the 58 acres. The creek acts as a retention area for stormwater, controlling floods and replenishing the groundwater. Tidal water from the estuary enters the creek every day, creating the unique brackish water ecosystem, a reservoir of biodiversity. But pollution comes from both the urban runoff and the river.
Anyway, so you guys can see more of it. Just wanted to give you a sense, but clearly there's 2 parts to this. One is to clean up the existing ecosystem, and second is to create a much more ecologically friendly ecosystem. So what I want to do, okay, so phase 1 is done, right? And as they said in the video, and as Parthik was presenting, 58 acres has been done. Now there are another 350 odd acres to do, right? Somewhat similar, again, ecological restoration, etc., right? So if we are going to do this, now let's start looking, let's draw our matrix. Okay, this is maybe power, this is low, this is high, and this is interest, and this is low, this is high. Okay, who do you think are the stakeholders involved in phase 2, and where should we put them? Let's sort of do that exercise right now on phase 2. Yeah, government of Tamil Nadu, but should I put in government of Tamil Nadu as one monolithic actor? What is government of Tamil Nadu? Yeah, so government of Tamil Nadu is an umbrella, right? There are several agencies within the government of Tamil Nadu. So the first thing is sort of to understand what's the unit of analysis, right? Absolutely, government of Tamil Nadu is a stakeholder, right? But government of Tamil Nadu in some ways is a concept. The way it works is through a number of departments, right? So who are the specific stakeholders, Harsh? Corporation of Chennai, okay? Corporation of Chennai, now it's called the Greater Chennai Corporation, so we'll use GCC now instead of COC. Where should I put them? High power, high interest, and okay, all right. I'm just going to democratically do whatever you guys want, and then we'll sort of, Slum Clearance Board, the Tamil Nadu Slum Clearance Board, okay, where are they? Very important player, because there are slums to be cleared and resettled, okay, in this. High power, high interest, high power, low interest, okay, what do we like? High power, low interest, high power, high interest. What do you guys want to do? Low power, high interest? Okay, most of you seem to say high power, low interest. See, but this is interesting, right? We can't really make up our minds. It's not so clear, right? Do they have high power? Do they not? Do they have high interest? I mean, how interested are they in this? They've got so much of slum resettlement to do. How interested are they in this, right? And how much power do they really have? Maybe it's high, maybe it's low, okay? So let's just say Tamil Nadu Slum Clearance Board. Okay, so again, it's the point is this is not a very easy exercise, right? It involves people sitting, discussing, sharing points of view. Yeah, okay. Who else? The Chennai Metro Water Sewage and Sanitation Board, right? Chennai Metro Water. Okay, where would they come in? High power, low interest, high power, high interest, right? So high power, high interest. Okay. So again, remember, interest can be positive or negative, right? When I say interest in the project. So Chennai Metro Water, it's because here the problem with the pollution seems to be that sewage is being let into that creek, right? And sewage is being let into by Chennai Metro Water, right? So they're certainly a stakeholder, right? So how much power do they have to influence the project? Not quite sure, right? But clearly, if you ask them to clean up their act, then they may or may not necessarily be very interested in the process. So their interest would certainly be high. Power, not quite sure, right? Could even put them. In fact, what I'll do is I'll put the GCC. Okay, I think I can even. Let's put the GCC. I think the relative position is also important, right? So GCC is on the far right. So really high power, really high interest. Chennai Metro Water, certainly high power, but somewhat lesser interest is what we'll sort of say. I'm sorry, high interest, lesser power, right? Who else? Okay, one by one. PFC. Right, so those are the guys who are developing the project, right? So where do we put them? They're definitely high power, high interest, right? Because they're calling the shots for the project, and of course they're highly interested. All right? They may not be powerful to influence the people, but they influence the design on the project. Okay, so again, but these are good questions, right? These are the debates that we should have. You know, are they powerful enough to influence people? Maybe not. Are they powerful enough to influence the design? Absolutely. So where should we place them, right? So they are powerful, but where do I place them in the network? Yeah, yeah. NGOs like CAG, Consumer Action Group. Okay, where do we put them? Low power, high interest. Where is that? Here, this one, right? No, low power, high interest. Sorry. So NGOs like the Consumer Action Group, high interest, But again, how much power do they have? Again, that's debatable. Some people will say, look, CAG has an entrenched reputation. Courts will take what they say very seriously. Others might say, they're just troublemakers. So yeah, good point. Varun. So people living. So remember, what were the slums that were there earlier? Srinivasapuram and Raja Gramin Thotam or whatever, right? So of course those are gone, but there are other slum dwellers, okay? So let's just say the slum dwellers. Where do we put them? Low power, high interest. Okay, now and negative interest, right? So interest can be, it's high positive or high negative, right? So we are looking at the modular interest in some ways. But again, this is interesting, right? Because this is certainly the case in phase 1. Right, so these guys really didn't have much of a voice and they got pushed out pretty easily, right? There wasn't as much, but that's probably because it was 58 acres and these were just, it was just a tiny sliver of slums that had to be resettled. I'm not sure about the data, but if there are a whole lot more, then just collectively, because there are a lot of people, they might actually start shifting towards the right. We know that they have high interest, right? They may also start having high power. Right, if there are large enough number of people that can actually influence, for instance, an electoral campaign in that constituency, okay, they may have high interest, right? So again, things to think about. Okay, who else? Urban infrastructure. So TUFISIL, right, which is also, I don't know how clear it is in the case, there's this Tamil Nadu Urban Infrastructure Financial Services Limited, which is a quasi-government organization. What the Adayar Punga Trust and what is now the Chennai Rivers Restoration Trust, the same thing, it's been renamed, is actually a part of that. So Chennai Rivers Restoration Trust, right, let's call them that because I think it's much more relevant. Where does Chennai Rivers Restoration Trust fit in? Adayar Punga Trust, whatever, same thing. So these guys are developing the project, okay. Are there stakeholders where, okay, so there are tons of, so let's just list out a few other stakeholders because it'll take too much time to map everyone on. Who are some other stakeholders? The general public, okay, very good. Let's put the general public. Where do I put them? Okay, so maybe general public goes here because general public, right, there are residents who obviously have a high interest. General public like me as a citizen, when Adayar Punga phase 1 was going on and I lived in Chennai, etc., I was somewhat interested in the project, but didn't take really a keen interest. I had virtually no power to influence anything, right? So general public might sort of fall in there. Great, yeah. Absolutely, and by the way, this is a very dynamic graph. I can't just draw it today and sort of just laminate it and say this is the graph for the project. 6 months later, things might change. Organizations may no longer exist. Chennai Rivers Restoration Trust is an organization, something else might happen to it. Right, so government departments might merge, right, new NGOs might come in, international NGOs might come in, right, so this is highly dynamic, okay, so at any given point of time, and that's why we need to start revisiting this, yeah. Absolutely, where would you put an opposition party? So an opposition party may not have high power, they might have low power, they might have high interest, right, so where are we here, low power, high interest. Opposition parties. I mean, kind of depends on how what the government is looking like. Okay, today's political situation in Tamil Nadu, you might have a certain interpretation of where they need to be. Okay, okay. So there are tons of other government organizations. There's Chennai Metropolitan Development Authority, right? So, etc. So we can put in more government actors there. There's one major actor that we have not put here. Well, World Wildlife Fund, fine. That would, I would assume it would be somewhere with the CAG, etc. Maybe a little bit more powerful because they're international, so maybe I want to put WWF here. Well, CAG might argue we're actually local, we are actually more powerful, we know more people here, so that's debatable. One very critical actor we're missing. Coastal Regulation Authority, fine, that's also an important actor, that's not here. Okay, where would we put them? Coastal Regulation Authority. Low interest, high power, right? Interesting. So they have a high power because they can set the regulation. They are a coastal regulation authority. They're not really concerned about this project alone. So where are we? That's high power, low interest. Coastal regulation authority. The judiciary, the High Court, extremely important actor because we can see how many of these disputes are actually ending up in court, right? I want to build an Ambedkar Mani Mandapam. People say yes, people say no, it ends up in court, right? Where's the court here? High Court. High power, high interest, high power, low interest. High power, low interest, I go with you, right? The High Court. right? They have a lot of power, obviously what they say has to stand, right? But they don't have an interest directly in this project necessarily, right? Their function is to uphold the constitution and pass equitable judgments on cases that are put in front of them, etc., not necessarily to either help or hinder the progress of the Adyar Punga, right? So this is, and again, this is an exercise that we can carry out in much larger detail, right? But now it actually gives us, first of all, it gives us a sense of who are the stakeholders on the project. Second, it gives a sense of, if one irate citizen writes a letter, should I deal with it or not? If PFC comes in with some complaint about the project, should I take it seriously or not? Or if the Greater Chennai Corporation has issues with stormwater, so the Greater Chennai Corporation says, I'm going to let out all of my stormwater from the stormwater drains into the Adyar estuary, and from there it's going to go into the project, into the sea. That may or may not be good from PFC's perspective, because they also want to control the water flow going through the creek, right? So now these are stakeholders that have to be very actively managed, because they have high interest and high power on these kinds of projects, okay? You want to try to convince the CAG to start looking a little bit positively at the project, right? Similarly, you want to start trying to see if these stakeholders can sort of move positively up here. These stakeholders can move positively, well, or not necessarily move positively up, but can they be positive with regards to the project, right? What are you going to do with the slum dwellers? Okay, so it depends. So each of them have a stake in the project, and sort of mapping it out at least tells you who are the critical ones, right? Whose demands we absolutely need to keep in mind. So if PFC comes up with some idea that is very, very difficult to implement, then we really need to invest a lot of time and resources in understanding what they have to say, right? Slum dwellers, yes, we do, but they may not have as much power. So we need to find other ways to convert it positively. Maybe we offer them a really good resettlement package elsewhere, right? So this is step one. But step two is also that these people are all connected, right? So these people are not acting in isolation. So maybe CAG has some connection with PFC. I mean, they all are in some sense environmental non-profit groups in some sense. Maybe the slum dwellers have some connection with slum dwellers, and the opposition parties are connected, okay? In turn, the opposition parties are connected to the general public, okay, etc., right? So maybe there is no connection between Chennai Metro Water and the Greater Chennai Corporation, right? Maybe there's a structural hole there, so these guys are not talking to each other, and therefore it becomes very difficult for the Chennai Corporation to do something and prevent sewage from flowing into the Adyar estuary, right? Maybe the finance department is an important player here, because they'll have to come out with the money, right? So I think this is the first step in if you do not manage stakeholders, sooner or later CAG will go to court, they'll get or somebody will go to court against the project. You'll be in a big dogfight. Maybe it will go in your favor, maybe it won't. What we can guarantee is that the project will be delayed, large amount of resources will be consumed. When the decision comes, even if it's in your favor, the project contours itself might have changed, the creek might be in a completely different situation than when it was earlier. You might have to do your studies again, all kinds of complications. So therefore, not managing stakeholders is not an option, right? How do I manage stakeholders? Let me first list them out. Let me first figure out who are the ones that can really influence the project, who are the ones that are sort of second level of influences. Then let me try to see who's linked with each other. How can I build the most effective coalition, right? So if CAG really has a really good rapport with the slum dwellers, right, really good rapport with WWF, right? CAG actually has with PFC, right, with CRRT, because remember that last slide that Parthik presented, INTAC and CAG and others were also on this monitoring committee, right, for the project. So maybe if that's the case, CAG becomes a very central actor, right? Or they may be a very important broker, bringing together other activists, the general public, some of the government organizations, etc., because they are this platform. In some cases, IIT Madras sometimes becomes that platform, right? Because we are sort of neutral. We are able to sort of bring in people from government. We are able to bring in people from the private industry and have roundtables on campus where we can actually trade these kinds of views. We become the brokers in the social network, right? Otherwise, there's a big distrust between the environmental groups and government, right? But environmental groups might trust IIT because we are neutral, we are academic. Government might trust IIT, we are also a central government institute, and therefore we could actually be the broker, the boundary spanner that fills that structural hole. So maybe the situation, the idea is to get IIT Madras in here and say that too many stakeholders, we are not able to manage them. Can you bring them together? right? Can we influence you, and can you then influence both parts of these networks, right? So that is the way in which we need to start thinking to manage stakeholders, and that will in turn minimize all of these court cases, this, that, etc. All right. Okay. Couple of hands went up. Maybe a couple of last comments if anyone has any. They could, but in this particular case, that's an important point, and you have to. So the Parthik's point is PFC might have no power, right? And Harsh was making a similar argument, or Nandish, one of you were making a similar argument earlier, right? Now, and that's where it's important not to look at the surface, right? To go down. PFC, right, is an organization from Pondicherry, right, that has very deep knowledge on ecosystem rejuvenation, restoration. It's not a skill that I can very easily replace, right? It's not something that a large contractor like a Larsen and Toubro can easily do, right? It's not something that an Ernst & Young or a PricewaterhouseCoopers or a consultant can easily do. This is, so therefore the ability to replace PFC, right, may not necessarily be very high. But I agree with you, in a traditional slum development project where I get a general contractor who's pouring concrete, right, they may have very little power, right? That's a skill that might be easily replaceable. Once the rates are fixed, I can replace you, bring someone else in, right? So we need to start getting deeper to form these matrices, and as you can see, it's not easy, we all don't agree, right? But unless we come to some kind of agreement through collaborative discussion, etc., only then can we start figuring out how to manage. We haven't gotten into how to manage people yet, right? And these guys did a bunch of things. You know, they did painting competitions in schools so that school children would feel a sense of ownership. Through that, their parents would feel a sense of ownership. So they did many things, right? To bring, they created this Adyar Restoration Trust. They brought in CAG and Intact to monitor, to give them a slice of the pie. But we're not talking about strategies here. We're just saying step one. If you want to do projects better, realize that stakeholders can affect projects. Start systematically looking at ways in which you can list and map and figure out what your stakeholder landscape looks like, right? Then you figure out what an appropriate strategy is. Should I hold a painting competition? Should I do an advertising campaign? Should I give these people some responsibility? Should I give this person some equity in the project? What do I do, right? There are tons of strategies. We'll discuss a few more of them as we go forward in the class, right? But this is just how we start, right? So tool number one in your toolkit on, or set of tools number one in your toolkit, if you like, on how do I build projects better. Yeah. Cool. So we'll stop here.